everybody. It's 9 o'clock. Good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock. I'd like to call the May meeting of the Louisiana Physical Therapy Board to order. Quick note, we are virtual today due to the inclement weather around the state, and I hope everybody is safe out there today. As a reminder, we are recording the meeting, and the recording will be made available on the website for 2 years. Since we are virtual, please use the raise hand feature to indicate when you would like to speak. I'd like to call the Secretary O'Day. Would you please make a roll call?
Yes, sir. Mr. Claude Tremblay.
Present.
Mr. Lee Riley.
Here.
Mr. Adam York.
Here.
Mr. Matthew Williams. Mr. Matthew Williams.
He is showing in the...
Here. Sorry, there we are.
Okay, that's all right, great. Mr. Phil Page.
Here.
Mr. Danny Louie.
Here.
Mr. O'Day Laverne, present. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum. All
right, we have a quorum. O'Day, would you like to say the pledge?
Sure. If you would, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you. And would you like to lead us in a prayer as well, O'Day?
Dear Lord, thank you for the wisdom of our leadership to allow us to meet virtually and not have us drive through the weather. We ask that we all meet here this morning in order to fill out the purpose of the Louisiana Physical Therapy Board. And as we come from all walks of life, may we all come together as one in order to protect the public. In your name, amen.
Amen. Mm-hmm. Okay, the purpose, we are here to protect the public health, safety, and welfare and to provide for state administrative control, supervision, licensing, and regulation of the practice of physical therapy in Louisiana. For the public, if you're present and you wish to make a comment at this board meeting, please identify yourself and the group, organization, or company you represent. Okay. Let's take up the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes. The agenda is posted and it has 4 consent orders listed, but we are no longer going to be considering the consent order that is in the matter of licensee last name Saunier.
Do we need to make a motion that we amend the agenda?
I'll move to amend the agenda.
And excuse me, as a matter of business, if we would, when you make a motion today, if you would please state your name when you make the motion. If you second the motion, please state your name. And we will also again today try to have a timekeeper and have everyone's comments limited to 3 minutes. And out of respect to everyone, that you will be allowed to speak once, so everyone has had the opportunity to speak before you are able to be authorized to speak twice.
Thank you, O'Day. Lee Riley, board member. I move to amend the agenda and remove licensee number 11763 in the matter of the consent order for Gabriel Saunier from the agenda.
Claude Tremblay, board member. I second it.
Mr. Chairman, the agenda there's been a motion and a second to approve changes to the agenda. All those in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
You have a unanimous vote to change the agenda.
Very good. Minutes. Let's take up the approval of the minutes from March 2025. Are there any proposed changes to the minutes? Someone will make a motion to approve those minutes?
Phil Page, motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, Lee Riley, I second the motion.
Seeing no objections, these minutes have been approved. Going into consent orders. The next item on the agenda are up, should be on the screen. Proposed consent orders. Jim, is there anything in open session that you would like to discuss before we go into executive session to discuss these matters? Jim, there.
Yeah, I can hear you. So you all have had an opportunity, I think, to review the orders, but I can, if you like, I can run through each one of them briefly. It's up to you whether you want me to do that or not.
You can run through them briefly for me.
All right. Okay, the first one that we have, Stephen Powell, licensee number A8990, case 2024-I-032. And I'm just going to give kind of a real high summary of these. The complaint was that he signed on behalf of a patient for a PTA visit that took place on November 25 of 2024. It was determined that the patient was hospitalized on the date that he allegedly saw her. He admitted to his employer that the note and the bill, those were fraudulent, according to the complaint. In his response, he admitted to improperly documenting the PTA visit, as well as signing the signature. He claimed it was an honest mistake, that he had multiple devices for multiple jobs, and basically he got mixed up when he did that, that note. We did an informal conference with him. Initially, he kept to that original story, but when pressed, he admitted that it was fraudulent, because of course there are vitals and that kind of stuff on there. He acknowledged that those were not accurate, and that those were made up as well. He was aware that when he submitted the note, it was fraudulent. He also admitted he had done it at other times, and that some of the information that he had provided to the board was not accurate. After the informal conference, our investigator spoke to his former supervisor. One of the things that the licensee had said was that he had not complained about, or he had complained about being overworked, and that was an issue. But his former employer disputed that fact. So we believe that there was a fraudulent act and that he was not honest about that. So that the consent agreement, as you've seen, has that he will be suspended for 6 months. He'll be on probation for 3 years after that. During that 6-month probation period, he's got to take the APTA, Professionalism and Ethics. It's a 4-part series. And the rest of it, of course, there's reimbursement of cost and, standard terms in that consent agreement. I'll go to Ms. Campbell next, and stop me if y'all have any questions, of course.
And in that 3-year span, it shows that in the consent order that he's unable to work in or apply for a job in a home health setting.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. That's right.
And supervised practice.
That's correct. Okay. The next one is Kelly Campbell, licensee 09533R, case number 2024-I-024. On September 24th of last year, she was arrested for unlawfully possessing a Schedule IV controlled substance without a prescription. It was a medication. We got the police report via subpoena. She was arrested based upon an incident at Walgreens on August 28 of 2024. Another customer had dropped off a script there, got a prescription. They went up to the counter at checkout, put the prescription down to pick something else up, and they accidentally left it there. They called the store back. Store did not see the prescription. They reviewed video and saw that the respondent had picked up the prescription, looked at it, kind of put it up under her purse, and walked out of the store with it. It was for Klonopin, if I recall correctly. She subsequently returned the medication to the store. I think it was missing 2 pills per the police report. After her arrest, because they, of course, they pick her up and arrest her, she went to inpatient rehab in conjunction with her criminal case. We got treatment records on her, which indicated that she had other arrests that had not been reported to the board. one related to a DUI, one related to a drunken disorderly arrest. We had our informal conference with her. She was referred to RPTP for an evaluation and recommended ultimately through that process to do a fit for duty evaluation. In working with her attorney, they agreed to have her evaluated. She went to Victory Addiction Recovery Center to do the 3-day evaluation. She was determined to not be fit for practice, and her recommendations, as far as the evaluation go, those are at number 8 of that consent agreement. We issued a summary suspension order. I said we, our executive director did on August 2. So she was suspended pending an inpatient treatment and determination by an addictionologist that she's safe to return to the practice. What's reinstated, all of that of course, she has to jump through several hoops, but if ultimately she's determined to be safe to practice, she's got a 5-year probation, and during that time, she's going to have to be in RPTP. Of course, there, like I said in the last one, there are normal reimbursement of cost and other standard terms that are in all of our consent agreements. And investigative committee, if you have anything else to add, or if anyone has any questions.
I'll just, Jim, you said August 2 was the summary suspension, but it was April 2.
It was, yes, correct, April 2nd. Got my A's mixed up there. Anything else? Okay. We'll go to Ms. Duplantis. You all remember that we had a hearing with Ms. Duplantis in December, and her history with the board is lengthy. Just in short, she had a drug issue that led to practice issues in 2014. She subsequently did treatment. She was prosecuted for healthcare fraud. She ultimately pled guilty to 2 felonies, served 9 months in prison. She had several prior agreements and board orders. And one of the main limitations that we addressed at the December hearing that affected her was that she had to have continuous supervision in order to practice. And so she asked the board to reconsider that requirement. Ultimately, her motion was not granted by you all, but then you recommended maybe terms by which would be acceptable for the board as far as a new consent agreement goes, and how that supervision would look. And so we crafted a consent agreement that we believe is reflective of your advisements at that December hearing. And so one of the things she's got to do is she's got to do a fit for duty evaluation within 30 days. If she's determined to be safe to practice, she has to submit to a supervised clinical practice for 6 months. As directed, it was left to the supervising PT to determine the amount of supervision required and the manner of supervision. There were some requirements, minimal, I would say, regarding who would be able to be that supervisor, and that's at number 2 of the restrictions that's placed in the consent agreement, meaning that person has to be, 3 years of practice in good standing, those types of things that we had all discussed. She's got to participate in the RPTP for 6 months. After she comes back in, she's got to do a participation agreement regarding that. She's got to complete additional CEUs during that first 6-month period. And one thing that we also did was we made a 5-year repayment plan for the money that is owed to the board. There was no time frame in her prior orders for that, and she agreed to all of that. So we have submitted that to you as well. Any additions from anyone or questions regarding the Duplantis? Okay.
We move to go into executive session. So, do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Bill Page, motion to go into executive session.
Is there a second?
Lee Riley, second the motion.
Is there any discussion or public comment? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. So let's give everyone a minute or two to exit the room and for the virtual attendance to be paused for a few minutes.
Yes, I'm going to move everyone to the waiting room. If you'll just hang tight with me, everyone.
if y'all all would like for just tech support, Jessica can stay in executive session since she's not a member of the investigative committee. If y'all would like that support. Otherwise, she'll have to make one of you host.
I would like the support.
I'd like to support as well. Is Jim staying in executive session or how's this?
If you need me, I can stay in. It's up to you.
It's always good to have Jim
Yeah, I
there.
think so.
Okay, I think Charlotte, you're the last one, so I'm going to move you into the waiting room and I'll stay. So sorry. Okay, we are back in session and the recording has resumed.
So
I move to exit executive session. Lee Riley, I move to exit executive session.
Adam, you already-
Second.
do we have any objections? There's a second? I didn't hear that.
Who was the second?
Adam.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the first consent order, which would be Stephen Powell, license number A8990, complaint number 2024-I-032.
O'Day Laverne, I so move.
Lee Riley, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The second consent order is for Kelly Campbell, license number 09533R. Consent order number 2024-I-024.
Flo Tremblay, I move to accept the consent order as written.
O'Day Laverne, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The next one would be Gretchen Duplantis, license number 04772F. Case number 2014-I-004. Case number 2019-I-002. And case number 2020-I-006.
Lee Riley, I move to accept the consent order as presented.
O'Day Laverne, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. Now we're moving on to special programs. And we have a student intern, Jacelyn. Hey, Jacelyn, and now we'll give you the floor.
I just was texting with Jacelyn. She is available. I'm waiting for her to join the Zoom at the moment. I think she was possibly on campus. I'm not sure if classes there. I think this might. So she should be with us shortly. I'm sorry for the delay.
Can we move to the next item on the agenda while we're waiting?
Let's see. Sorry, I'm checking the participants list. So that's officer reports. If Dana, if you wanted to give your chairman's report while she's getting her Zoom open, that's what she said she's doing right now.
Sure. As the chairman report, number one, with the bill that was in committee that got passed through committee in the House. Me and Charlotte were in attendance of it. HB 159 by Representative Stagney passed through the House. This is an association bill about PTA supervision. There are amendments to the language that was originally proposed. Specifically, if the bill passes as it currently is amended, The number of supported personnel allowed would be 6. And the PT reassessment visit would need to occur every 12th visit or every 30 days. Again, Charlotte and I were present at the House Committee, and we were not asked questions. And we will be present at the Senate Committee in case they have questions for the board. Any questions regarding the bill?
Did they make any mention of unlicensed staff or students or?
It's a good question. Charlotte, did you?
They did not make mention of that. They did have a question about the shortage of the workforce in Louisiana. And I see that Christina Fauché is also on the call or on the meeting. So if she has anything to add besides that, but that was their primary concern, is the workforce needs in Louisiana and how this would help.
So for clarity, is it 6? That's including the technicians as well in the 6 supervision?
The language in the bill doesn't specify, it just says supported personnel. So, yeah, it doesn't specify techs or anything else.
Okay. We'll move on to next. I got 3 items on the chairman report. Office report. I think Lee Riley attended the FSBPT regulatory workshop for board members. It was in Virginia. And Lee, do you have anything you want to add with that, or tell us a little bit about what you learned?
Sure. I thought it was a great conference. I will say that Louisiana was well represented, in at the meeting. They showed some of our Practice Act language as examples of model Practice Act language. And our executive director was well received by all the attendees. Her reputation precedes her.
Very good. Great. Thanks for going there too, Lee. That's great.
Oh, no, it was good. It was very good. I would recommend it for the board members.
And it's once a year, correct?
Is that correct, Charlotte? It's once a year, the workshop?
Yeah.
Yes, they offer it once a year, and you can attend virtually or in person, but I would recommend in person if you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would second that recommendation.
And the final announcement is about dates that we need to save on your calendar. 2 things. We got a retreat we're trying to set up. We are waiting on vacancies to be filled before having a retreat, but since we're not sure when this is going to happen, Charlotte is going to send a doodle poll out to get this scheduled after legislation session. Be on the lookout, and the retreat will likely be held sometime in July or August. Charlotte, you want to say anything about the retreat?
No, this is an opportunity for us to have some deep discussion about important topics. And so we would definitely want everyone to attend. So be on the lookout.
That'll be in Lafayette, the retreat?
It'll be in Lafayette. Yes, it'll be in Lafayette for sure at our board office.
Okay, and also the conference dates that we're looking for a conference for the 2026 Extra Mile Conference will either be February 13th through 15th or February 27th through March 1st. And that will be in Lafayette as well, or what do we think?
Yes, those are the available dates for the DoubleTree in Lafayette.
Okay.
Charlotte, did we consider doing it up in Shreveport for the licensees who live in the northern part of the state?
Yes, we did consider that. We spoke with the association about attendance records in that area of the state, and it's not advised that we do our big conference necessarily there, but maybe we do something smaller because the attendance just it's not well attended in Shreveport historically for some reason. The Lafayette location is right there on I-10 and I-49, so it's easy for everybody, but we might, and we can discuss this at the retreat, we might want to do small educational opportunities in other regions around the state and then have, this conference as well. But that is what was discussed so far.
Thank you.
Is Jacelyn here?
Yes, we have her. So if you all will give me a moment, I'm going to stop sharing this presentation and switch to her presentation. So this is Jacelyn's presentation. Jacelyn, I see you there in the corner, so I'm gonna turn it over to you. Then you're ready to present.
Okay, so hi, my name is Jacelyn Rab. I'm currently a senior at UL majoring in political science. I'm currently their summer intern, and I was working on the Matrix project. The purpose of the project was to take the Matrix that was currently being used for licensing individuals with criminal history and to make any changes that it needed. If there any changes did need to be made, I decided that there were changes that needed to be made to the matrix, such as a time elapsed section and a rationale section. And then we can go to the next slide, and we can go skip that one as well. So the importance of a matrix. I believe a matrix ensures fairness and consistency. I believe that it protects public safety. I believe that it supports rehabilitation and reentry. It provides legal defensibility, and it gives a clear roadmap when making licensing decisions. And then we can go to the next one. So whenever I was constructing this matrix, I had a process that I went through. The first step that I did is I reviewed the old matrix. Then I researched licensing matrices of other boards. Then I also interviewed other boards such as Michelle Sigmund, she's from Oregon, and then Jeff Bouchon from Utah. Then I used Utah's matrix to construct as a template to construct the one that I currently have. I sent the rough draft to the Pelican Institute for review because we really value their opinion and we wanted to make sure that the matrix wasn't too strict. We wanted to get others' opinions. I used their feedback to construct the current matrix today, and she ended up telling me that the matrix was a little too strict, so I went and I made her revisions. We can go to the next slide. So in the original matrix, I saw 3 weaknesses. So at first it was a little long and difficult to follow it, so I simplified it. The next one is neither of the matrices, they accounted for time elapsed nor provided a rationale section. And for the third problem, the original matrix used applicants could be more specific, in my opinion. And then you can go to the next slide. So this one was used by applicants on your left of your screens, and on the right of your screens, this one was used by staff. In my opinion, the one on the left used by applicants was a little bit long and hard to understand. So ultimately I decided to simplify the matrix. And then we can go to the next slide. This is going to be the new matrix. If it's, did it not pop up?
No, it didn't pop up, but to the board members, you have both the original matrix and the updated matrix in your dashboards. Was everyone able to access and take a look at that?
Yes, I was able to.
Okay, I can bring it up on the screen real quick if you'd like.
Okay, that'd be great.
Can do that.
Yeah, let's do that real quick. Hang tight one moment. I've got everything right here. So are we showing them the updated matrix then, Jacelyn?
Yes, the new one.
All right, hang tight. Sorry, y'all. This is what happens when I'm doing things on the fly. Slideshow. There we go. That's what I needed. Okay. So trying to get my folder here. I apologize. My computer is thinking a little too long. Let's try that again. There we go. All right, the updated matrix, pulling that up right now. Share this document with everyone. Okay, so we have that and make that a little bit larger if I can. There we go. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Jessica.
Awesome, great.
Okay. So as you can see, the charge or the conviction is going to be on the left side. And then we have a time elapsed section since the crime was committed at the top column. So we have from 0 to 12 months, 13 to 48 months, 5 to 10 years, and then 10 years. If you could scroll up a little bit for me, or down, sorry, then, or sorry, so I can see the key. So we have three different color-coded options for what could happen to the application. So we have a proceed with application for green, and then a yellow requires manager review and possible interview. And then for the red, we have escalated to the applicant review committee. And then, sorry, you can go down. Oh, then also on your far right, there's going to be a rationale section as well. As you scroll down, you can see that there's different crimes on the left, and then each has their different color-coded option as to what could happen. And if we scroll all the way to the bottom, we have a disclaimer section. Okay, so it's gonna have three disclaimers. This one is meant to be a guide. Decisions can be made by the applicant review committee at the discretion of the board. This matrix is based on the Code of Ethics as of April 2025. So I used the APTA Code of Ethics to construct the rationale portion of this matrix. And then finally, if someone is charged, convicted of multiple charges, whether they are related or not, their application must be escalated to the ARC. Okay. And then if there's no questions about the matrix right now, we can go back to the slides. Actually, I think that was the last one.
Yeah, I think that was your last, right before it was just your name and your contact information, Jacelyn, was the last slide.
So would there be any questions?
I do have a question in regards to your matrix. There is certain crimes that don't have statute of limitations, so it may be reported at a later time. And does your matrix take that into consideration as far as the timeline is concerned? Because if it's reported 10 years after child abuse or person with disabilities or mental defect or anything like that, if it's reported 10 years post facto, does the key for escalation and or advisement take that into consideration?
I don't take that into consideration necessarily. No, but well, I don't want to say how y'all should handle that, but I would say just look at the matrix again, and if y'all haven't had any problems out of the person, I think 10 years after, then we could probably handle it as an issue. That's personally how I would handle it, but I don't know how y'all would go about doing that. But I feel like if they haven't had any problems, like 10 years after you guys find out that they did commit that crime, then I would probably handle it as an issue and just allow them to keep practicing. But that's just my personal opinion. But no, it does not account for that.
Thank you.
Jacelyn, Lee Riley, I have a question. But you do have time frames, and the time frames are the time frames upon which the charge or conviction occurred. And then the matrix does account for that. Is that correct?
It accounts for how long ago.
How long ago? So there is a time. The time frame does account for. There is a consideration of the time frame to when the charge or conviction occurred.
Yes.
Within the matrix. Okay. And the group that you worked with to look over this, were there specific charges or convictions that they felt you needed to address individually because they were too harsh? Were there specific crimes that they pointed out where that this needed to be adjusted, or was it just an overall opinion?
For me, this was an overall opinion. I did get Miss Danielle's opinion and Miss Charlotte's opinion and a little bit of Miss Jessica's opinion as well. But for me, this was basically just an opinion. So if you guys do have like want to change anything about this, it can still be changed.
The outside group that you consulted with, the Pelican.
Oh, you're talking about no. Basically I just wanted their opinion on like how they handled this, most people actually told me they don't use a matrix. So the Utah board was really the only people that told me that they used the matrix. So I used theirs.
Well, thank you.
Clarification, this matrix is the matrix that is used when people are applying for initial application for licensure,
Yes.
background history.
Yes.
Any other states use a kind of matrix like this? Jason, did you say that?
Yes, the Utah one, so we actually just took the Utah matrix and we're basically using theirs.
Okay.
But other than that, it was very hard, like, to find
Texas or
anyone else who even used a matrix at all. So basically, I just got a little bit of insight, I guess, and opinions whenever I talk to other people other than Utah.
Charlotte, question, states that don't have a matrix, what do they do?
He said Jeff, or not Jeff, I talked to someone else, I forgot his name, but he said they basically just go case by case with each one. And if I remember him saying that if the crime like happened 10 years ago, they legally can't even look at it. They have to throw the whole thing out. So
Yeah,
I remember what state that was.
some states have laws where they can't consider certain crimes. They can't consider it after a certain time, things like that. And the part of the chart that says that exists currently. So this would be an updated one, but the original one has citations to certain Louisiana laws that are relevant to, if you have certain criminal activity in your background, you cannot work in the nursing home, you can't work in certain settings, things like that. And so those are all taken into account as well. Whenever things get escalated to this review of an applicant, we look at, what we've done in the past, decisions that have made, how things have happened. And we always have the option to bring somebody before a hearing before the entire board if we think that, we're not comfortable with the decision. This matrix would allow us to look at both new applicants as well as rap sheets that we receive on individuals who are already licensed. So some of the longer time since the crime is like when we're initially putting somebody in the applicant pool. But, for somebody more recently, it would be the more recent charge or conviction. Those are more like licensees. The other thing is there's a disclaimer that it's still at the discretion. So this is not, I think one of the reasons people don't put a matrix in place is because it boxes you in. And so it's always at the discretion of the board because there are aggravating factors and mitigating factors as well. And unless there's like a Louisiana law that says you're prohibited and you can't, then, otherwise it's sort of, at the discretion of what would be safe for patients of physical therapy.
Lee Riley, yeah, one of the things that I learned at the FSBPT meeting is that there is considerable variance across jurisdictions with the initial licensure requirements. And not all jurisdictions even require a criminal background check for initial licensure. There are only 33 of the 53 jurisdictions that are members of the FSBPT require a criminal background check for initial licensure. So this is certainly more in depth than some of the jurisdictions require.
And you have to require a criminal background check if you're a member of the PT Compact. And that's why there are that many states that do require it now, because prior to the compact, there weren't even that many states. And some states say, in order to be part of the compact, you have to, at initial licensure, effective the date that you issue compact privileges. So we've been doing criminal background checks, since 2016. Some states retroactively run a criminal background check on all their licensees, and Jim can attest to the fact of other boards in Louisiana who have done this. You really need a matrix to decide what you're going to do whenever you get all the reports in on people who have been practicing in your state with no complaints, and you find out that they have some history that maybe they wouldn't have been licensed in the first place. So it's really important to have a matrix in place if you're going to do that. We don't have the authority to do that in our law as of right now.
Thank you for your work, Jason.
Good. Jason,
you.
thanks for your hard work.
Thank you.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Do we need to entertain a motion?
I have a question. Is the Pelican Institute a conservative organization or are they a liberal organization?
They seem to lean a little bit more towards liberal, in my personal opinion. I've never read anything like that. I've never seen, but since they support like the more of the rehabilitation and reentry, so I would say they lean a little bit more liberal.
So is your position to advocate using a matrix over doing a case-by-case basis?
Can you ask that again? I'm sorry.
I said, you know, if let's say you have a potential applicant and you are using the matrix, there's going to be certain things that are going to disqualify them or not prevent them from being disqualified. If you're just using a matrix within the parameters of what you've been provided, you might allow an applicant to go through, which may not need to be or should not be. So is your position that a matrix is going to be much better at making the process fair compared to having a case-by-case basis?
I feel like there should be probably like a mix of personal opinion as well as using the matrix. I think that using the matrix, it will have flaws if you just go by the matrix itself, but I feel like using whoever's deciding a personal opinion and the matrix, I feel like that's probably the best way to go, in my personal opinion.
Would your matrix be applied just for new applicant or also reinstatement of license or an application to reinstate their license?
Charlotte, I'm not positive about that question.
Yeah, the way that this matrix is set up, it can be used in all determinations of information that we receive related to criminal activity. It is a tool that helps for consistency as we have an ever-changing group of individuals who are, making decisions on these things. In addition to precedent that's been set and how, treating people fairly and equally who come before us is important for similar activity, but there are details in each situation that comes up before the board that may need to be considered as well. And so not boxing yourself in and just saying, this is a rubber stamp and we're going to do this every single time. And this is exactly it. And it's very black and white, but having a guide to help with decisions that addresses, and our old guide it wasn't perfect. And so we were using it. We've had a matrix, we've used one, and it's been better than having, no matrix. But we were like, what, we really need to take a look at it. And that's what Jason did, is took a look at it and saw how we could improve on what we already were using.
Yeah, I was just trying to put in perspective one of the cases that we had to discuss today. The original crime happened in 2014. She's been under consent order and other, other things during that period of time, but based on the 10 plus years, she would not be disqualified to apply for a license, and or they would just proceed with the application. So, understanding your point that it's a flexible thing, I guess My point is, if you have a matrix to standardize from one board to the other, and then in addition to that, have personal judgment calls, or the board having certain latitudes on the matrix, then you end up with, no firm structure from one board to another board. Does that make sense?
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment?
Yes.
Um, Jason, I greatly appreciate the effort that you've done here. And I mean, no disrespect whatsoever with my comments that I'm about to make. But to the board members, I'm very cautious about having an undergrad political science major, opinion of one, along with the Pelican Institute, advise the board on medical decisions on criminal activities. I would like us to maybe take this under consideration and give it further review by the board members before we make a final decision.
Thank you for that, Ode. And that is sort of so the Pelican Institute was one area, and it was my suggestion to reach out to them. And the reason why is because they they're in a national discussion about second chances and sort of, what is realistic in terms of recidivism, people getting back to work, things like that. So it was just like, hey, let's get filled in with the individuals who are sort of like advocating for people who have criminal history. And then also let's talk to the other licensing boards. Let's talk to the other PT boards in other states. Like, let's get a big perspective in a bunch of different areas. Cause she also talked to Oregon's PT board. But, and then whenever she brought back all the information, she sat with, me and Danielle to talk about like how these, the matrix is actually used currently. But the idea was that y'all would have an opportunity to look over it, see what the recommendation of the changes are, and scrutinize that and determine if y'all like those changes, if y'all don't like those changes, if those are right for our board or not. Y'all might want, a legal, Jim to look at that and give y'all input on that. So y'all don't have to decide on it today, but that is the purpose. It's not for, Jacelyn to say, this is what y'all need to use. And y'all say, okay, well, then we're going to use it. It was for y'all to review the recommendations based on all of the internship work that she did over the last, I think it's been since at least August. She's been working on this.
And again, I appreciate the work she did. My comments are meant no disrespect to the effort or to her personally. I do understand that, the trend is, and we should be a kinder, more considerate board. We're all trying to move away from the days of Gestapo activities. But I do think that we need a little bit more time to review this matter before we make a final decision.
I think that's fair. And we could even bring it to the
fair.
retreat for a deeper discussion, for a long discussion.
Cheryl, that would be my recommendation. Is I think this would be a great topic for us to discuss at the retreat.
Yes. Thank you, Lee.
So we don't need to entertain a motion to adopt this right now, correct?
I would think not.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to place this decision matrix on our agenda for our summer retreat.
I would second that. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. We're going to move it to the retreat for discussion. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you very much.
You guys.
Okay, so we did the chairman report. I believe we have the treasurer report, correct? O'Day, you want to lead us with the treasurer report?
Charlotte, if you'd put it up, the treasury report has been printed and put on the dashboard. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I would.
She put it on desk.
Okay.
Is Charlotte putting it on the board? She's gonna put.
I can share it. I'm sending a request to be able to share.
I'm sorry, are we wanting to put up the individual documents for each of you instead of the PowerPoint?
O'Day requested that we share the treasurer's report on the screen.
Okay, it's just going to take a little bit of time. Hold on.
I have it open if you want to let me share. Everyone did have it in their dashboard ahead of time, and it will be attached to the minutes. So we can share it if you all think that's important, though.
I've given you permission, Charlotte. I've changed the setting.
Okay. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go through it.
Mhm.
What we attempt to do with the treasury report each quarter is to update the financial information as things are happening in real time, and then recognizing that this is the quarter where most of the activity comes in because renewals have just happened, and this is when the most of our revenue hits the books.
Okay, do you want me to talk through it real quickly?
If you'd like to, sure.
Sure. So January through March, you can see the income versus the expenses and the net income. As O'Day said, renewal season is from February to April. April, we also have a late fee, so we will also see a higher income in the next quarter as well as compared to the rest of the year. We're on target with all of our income and expenses as we or we're going to see later in new business how we're going to be amending the budget. The next one is our balance sheet highlights, which shows, checking and savings, accounts receivable, and then, our CDs pretty much is what you typically are interested in looking at, but we have all the information there for you. And then finally, renewals report. Our renewals, whenever O'Day and I originally talked about estimating the projected income for this year, we thought that 2,664 individuals would renew. However, actually only 2,682 renewed, which is 18 more than what we had originally estimated. And so we were pretty close to what we thought. And so I want to say that that was a pretty good estimate. 2 individuals also did not renew, but we sent out an email to all licensees saying these are the people who didn't renew on May 1st. Jessica got that out right away. And on May 1st, we had 2 individuals who were identified as having not renewed. One was a PT, one was a PTA, and they reinstated by May 2nd. So they didn't bill or, treat without that license in place for those 2 individuals. And so that is pretty much, and you can see non-renewals, we had 173. And this is not concerning in terms of our estimate because we always have some who don't renew, whether they're leaving the state or they're, for whatever reason. Phil Page did reach out to me and suggest that we send out a survey to those individuals who didn't renew and just say, hey, why didn't you renew? And we would like them to respond to the survey. We have no way of mandating that. But Phil is helping me with the question on exactly how we're going to ask the question. Did you leave the state? Did you stay in the state, but you're leaving the profession? Are you going to work in a different profession? Or are you not going to work at all? Are you retiring? So we have some questions we'd like them to answer. And so we can get a better picture of what's going on with the people who don't renew. But it was consistent with our average of percentage of those individuals who do not renew. And it was actually lower. So we had more people renew than we thought, 18 specifically.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's good to have that data information to be able to have that. So it's a good job.
And Charlotte attempts to give me credit for being involved in the estimation of how many people would relicense. You're being way too kind. I don't have a clue. Nor any input. Thank you.
Charlotte, I second Adam's comment. I think it would be great for us to know, in any given renewal cycle, the percentage of licensees who don't renew, and if possible, capture information about why they don't renew. And if so that way we could develop an action plan to try to address, any of the variables that are related to their decision.
Yeah, that was 100% Phil's idea, and I thought it was a great one. So he's going to help me with the questions so we don't miss anything, since we'll probably only have one shot at getting a response for those who will respond.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I remove it from my shared screen?
Sure. Thank you, Odette.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, O'Day. Again. So we're moving on to new business. And I believe we're speaking about Catherine Bowman. She has completed her probation period. Is there any discussion about Catherine, Charlotte, or?
Catherine has completed all requirements of her probation, and she also participated in an exit interview with me and Stephanie. And so she is recommended to move from probation to active at this time. She has fulfilled everything that the board has required.
I would be happy to move to authorize the staff to change the status for licensure of Catherine Bowman from probation to active on May 8th, 2025, pending completion of all requirements in the licensee's consent order. This motion being made by O'Day Laverne.
Lee Riley, I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? Any public comment regarding this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Catherine Bowman is now moved from probation to active status on May 8th, 2025. Okay, now we're moving on to new business. A mailing list change exemption request was made from a PT student from Texas Women University to be used to contact individuals for research purposes and not for profit.
So move, O'Day. Move to authorize the staff to provide the mailing list at no charge to Texas Women's University PT student Habib Adwal for the purposes of conducting research.
Lee Riley, I second the motion.
Oh,
Is there
I
any
have
discussion?
I have a discussion point. I'm okay with the motion, but I think in his last reply, he didn't provide the actual IRB approval. He said it was coming or something like that. So the only contention is that he has to provide us with the proof of the IRB.
Do we need to amend the motion?
I guess I would amend the motion to accept it pending receipt of the IRB approval.
I would accept that as a clerical amendment to the motion.
Any further discussion? Any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, next on the new business is the board is considering approval of the wellness versus maintenance clarification document drafted by Charlotte Martin to be made available on our website. Any discussion regarding this?
I move to approve the drafted statement regarding the clarification of wellness and maintenance to be included in our newsletter and made available on our board website. Very well done, very well written, very structured.
Bill Page, second.
Do we have any discussion?
Appreciate you guys putting that together. I know that was lengthy, but it's well done. Thank you.
Charlotte, Jessica, do we have a flow chart that we were working on?
Charlotte, I only have the document. Do we have something else that you want to share on your screen?
We do have a flow chart.
That flow chart.
Yeah, I can go ahead and put that up on the screen, Phil, because for the newsletter, it's not in the guidance document, but the newsletter would point to the guidance document and sort of provide a teaser that the guidance document is on our website. And so we can take a look at that flow chart and see if everyone wants to include that in the newsletter as well. So
I can get it. Give me just a second. I'm sorry.
Okay. And just display the flow chart, if that's okay, which is on page 2.
Yes.
Okay.
Give me just a moment. I'm going to switch between my documents. Sitting tight.
So Bill Page, again, worked outside of the board meeting on this to help with, how maintenance versus wellness versus treatment works. And he drew up this flow chart to help just have a visual. Can everyone see it?
I'm going to make it
No.
tiny bit smaller so I can pull it out a little bit. I know it's a little
thank you.
hard. I can email this out to everyone if they'd like.
But
This is nice. Good job, Phil.
Thank you.
Well
Well
done.
done, Phil.
Thank you.
So wait, where'd it go?
Is that flow chart on our, we have access to that flow chart?
No, it's not in your dashboards. The only question about, because I can send it out ahead of time before we put it in the newsletter and get y'all to make sure it's okay to have more time to look at it. But in terms of the initial screen for wellness, which is the arrow that goes down to the left, after the initial screen, there would be a determination that there's no medical condition. But the only thing would be like, do any people in Louisiana have no medical condition? So like, is there a way that we should word that, just a little differently, or not? And so that would be one question.
Yeah, the only thing would be no medical condition indicating skilled physical therapy would probably be the best thing to say.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
so my only concern about putting something up like this is that, does this become law? We like to think that this is an example, but when people see something on the board's website or in the board's newsletter, it's like, it's got to be that way or no way, or is there any other way, or is there any flexibility? I'm just a little concerned that this might come back one day and bite us.
Yeah, I think that's a good consideration to have. And as you read through the document that Charlotte and Jessica really put together, there's still some gray areas because it really does still come down to the judgment of the physical therapist on, what is a medical condition that requires skilled physical therapy. And I think to your point, O'Day, there's still a case-to-case basis with other factors that you have to consider, just like we talked about with a matrix. So the consideration of using a flow chart and a matrix and, maybe some kind of disclaimer on this flow chart that says this is used as guidance only or something like that might be helpful.
Yeah, and I think, in considering the statement of skilled physical therapy, I mean, we don't want to give the impression that a physical therapist performing wellness interventions is not a skilled intervention. I mean, so
Mhm.
the prescription of wellness interventions to achieve a specific outcome is still a skilled intervention.
Mhm.
And so the gray area comes down to, are you developing a formal plan of care? Do you have formal goals? Do you have time frames for those goals? Are you doing reassessment of patient progress towards those goals? If those goals are wellness goals, and if those goals are goals towards achieving some health outcome, then that would require the skill, and expertise of a physical therapist. So the issue would be, is it all physical therapy? Just targeted towards different goals.
And Lee, if I could address that, the world of wellness was just again one of the baby steps towards obtaining direct access. All in the beginning, you could do an evaluation without a referral, but you could evaluate only. You couldn't discuss the evaluation with your client. Um, now this came into, you could do wellness without a referral, and if this is what wellness was. So wellness still is physical therapy.
Mhm.
Still is, using your skills and knowledge. It was just an arena that you could do it without having to have a prescription or a referral to do so. And so my concern now is that there are therapists that believe, well, I'm doing wellness, therefore I don't have to do any documentation. I'm doing wellness and my patients are paying me cash. I don't need to follow all of these other rules.
Mhm.
And then there's a whole nother world that we haven't discussed. So this is going to lead me to emotion. There's a whole nother world that we haven't discussed is what do we do in sports medicine? What are we doing on the sideline? What are we doing when we're working with athletes? And so is wellness still working with athletes? Some people are going to say, well, my athletic team comes to my office or they come to the gym where I work and I work with them on improving their function. Or are you improving their function because you're taking care of a problem? Or are you just helping them to be more fit? So uh, to me, this doesn't answer questions. It gives me more questions that need answering. Um, so I may and what we've done a few years ago when we brought matters to new business, the new business we had a motion to bring it to new business. We had some discussions, and then we would refer the new business to a committee to then study it further and come back and make recommendations to the board instead of us having great lengthy discussions during new business.
So is your point, O'Day, the determination aspect of where you have no medical condition or medical conditions that don't require an escalation to medical intervention versus a medical condition which is either requiring medical intervention or at least supportive um, services coming from the medical community?
Some of that is my point, but I guess the other point is how do we document that? How is that perceived? How is that considered? Again, we have a orthopedic surgeon on our board. We have athletic trainers and PTs on our board. What do we do when we're on the sideline? What do we do when these kids come to a Saturday morning clinic? What do these kids do when they come to CrossFit?
My point to all of those has always been one where once you're a physical therapist, you're always a physical therapist. Therefore, you always have the responsibility of documentation and memorizing um, what happened, how it happened, and what led you to make the determination. So again, it goes to the point of the first step in the initial screening, making a determination if this is something that needs to be escalated, if something that doesn't need to be escalated, or something that needs to be monitored.
I think Katie Britton had a question. I saw her hand up. Or a comment.
I took it down, but I can wait till public comment time.
I think Ode, you have all good points, and to the point about being an athletic trainer on the sideline versus physical therapist, what you do it still comes down to the physical therapist making a decision on what's that medical condition, what's that injury. The way that the paper is written that we got is really trying to differentiate for a physical therapist just to simply understand kind of what Claude was saying is you got to document this. This is ridiculous that people are out there seeing these athletes on the side and not knowing that they simply have to document something, not just because it's law, but it's also covering your butt when something does go wrong. And so we were attempting to provide guidance out there because there still seems to be a lot of misunderstanding of that delineation between that and the responsibility that's still required in the law and the rule.
Because there's latitude in determination, I think it's very important, at least from a liability standpoint, that each and every physical therapist at least documents what led them to make whatever determination, if it goes into the wellness aspect, if it goes into a monitoring and or medical condition, active, chronic, or something associated with some other comorbidities that led us to put in one column versus the other column.
If last year, if our attempt to streamline and clean up the Practice Act would have been successful, probably the differentiation, if I'm not mistaken, the differentiation between wellness, that would have all just been eliminated because those were, again, steps leading up to when and how you can practice physical therapy with or without a referral. This strictly was a category that allowed you to do some intervention without a referral because it was thought that there was no medical condition that needed active therapy, but you were using your skills and knowledge as a therapist to help these people go to a goal. That doesn't eliminate the need for you to do your documentation. All right. So I would ask the group, this seems to be a little bit more complicated than we can probably agree upon right now. Where do we refer this? What committee do we refer this to?
Well, we have a motion to accept the document, but we didn't talk about the flow chart. Is this the flow chart is the issue?
Both are separate. I don't know if that helps. Like this was a part of something that Charlotte, I think, was going to send in the newsletter, but the document itself is entirely separate. So you guys, I think, are okay with that. Just letting you know from admin level.
Yeah, so to move things forward, let's vote on the document first,
Right.
and
Right.
put this on the table for the flow chart.
Okay. Yeah, so do we have a,
Can we have Katie's comment?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I didn't see the document, so I have no way of knowing how those two are related or to make comment on the document. But I would just add, just for consideration, that I think that one of the reasons that a licensee typically gets confused in this type of situation is they're questioning, when am I acting as a physical therapist and when I'm not acting as a physical therapist. And so I think your flow chart would be super helpful to say, like, even when you're acting in the wellness capacity, you're acting as a physical therapist. And so all Practice Act rules apply. That's where I hear a lot of confusion from licensees on that particular topic. And I assume that's what is trying to be clarified here, that even when you're providing wellness services as a physical therapist, you have to document, et cetera. So I think that there's value in making sure that that messaging is super clear. And for situations a little bit separate than that, but I think also is an important part of the conversation, is when licensees want to act in a way that is not under their physical therapy license. The concept of duty to care is super, super important, because a duty of care is defined by the individual, not by the therapist. And so I think that's an important consideration as well.
I think I'd like to have
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you,
Jim's
Katie.
position from a legal standpoint. If I'll give you a scenario which happened not too long ago. I had a patient that I was treating. Her husband came in, listened to all of the information that I was providing his wife, and asked me specifically, healthy individual, would you be able to train me? So if I did entertain the idea of training that individual, which would fall by all means under the wellness umbrella, would my license be in peril if he decided to sue me? If the answer is my license would be in peril because I am using knowledge specific to physical therapy, rehabilitation, habilitation, I think at that point, it's a moot point that once a physical therapist, always a physical therapist. Basic motto of the Marines, right? So if my license can be attacked, then I want to say that we have the same duties and responsibilities from our Practice Act to document as we move forward. If something was to change in the status, wellness may be a little bit more lax in documentation. You don't need to document on a day-to-day basis, but it would be a documentation of something that doesn't go according to plan rather than a documentation of progress towards goals.
Yeah, hey, tell yeah, it's kind of, I don't disagree. It's like us. So if you called me and said, hey, my mom fell down, or, we call them curbside consults. Y'all get them too, right? Somebody hurt themselves. What do you think? I haven't seen the person, don't know the person, know nothing about the person. If I give some guidance, they follow it, and it was really a metastatic tumor to the shoulder. And I just told them, hey, just take some Motrin, don't really worry about it. There's a presumption that I gave medical guidance because I opened my mouth as a physician. So your job as a physical therapist is no different, right? So if you're treating somebody wellness and they've got a problem that you're not getting because you're taking money doing wellness, but they really have another problem, and because they're weak, they really had some neuromuscular disorder that maybe you missed or not, you could be on the hook for that. I mean, just like we are, right? So I don't think you can say this is wellness, therefore I'm not a therapist. I think you're right that you really have to be once you're a therapist, like you're a therapist all the time, especially if you're laying hands on someone, whether you're doing it because I'm treating a problem or because I'm trying to help them get stronger, but there may be a problem. You should be hopefully seeing that as a therapist because you are one. So I don't know. It's kind of that sticky thing with us. It's the same thing. I think, if someone's seeing you for wellness, is it different than seeing you for therapy? Well, yes, right? Because maybe you bill it different or whatever. But I think your potential retribution later, if something was missed or not, could they come back on you? Sure, just like on a phone call for us, right? So I think
And
that's
that's why I'd like to have Jim's position on it, because I remember specifically having several conversations about the law in general, not as it pertains to me. And every single attorney buddies, I even have a judge that's a good buddy, they always start their conversation by, I'm not providing you with legal advice. There's always, that little disclaimer at the beginning or at the end saying, I'm not providing you with any information unless you become a signed client of mine I'm not allowing you to proceed forward with my information. It's more along the line of, these are vaguely your options, but at the same time, that attorney buddy is not accepting payments from me. If you're accepting payments for a service, again, when do you remove that license? When do you remove that hat of being an educated clinician? I don't think that will ever happen.
I agree.
Correct.
Yeah, tough to do, Claude. It, and we've talked about this in the past in the context of somebody who is um, doing some kind of service that is not necessarily PT related. And we had a question about that a couple of years ago, if I remember correctly. Like there's some device that they use that anybody could use. It doesn't necessarily have to be done by a PT. And I think maybe there was an idea that they were doing it in the same space. And liability and regulation are two different things. Liability, can they sue you? Of course they can sue you, right? You can sue anybody for anything. Whether it stands up in a court is a completely different question. It's outside the jurisdiction of this board to even really address that kind of thing. Regulatory wise, that's what we all have to address. And if somebody is doing wellness and that falls under the rules of the board, and somebody's doing wellness and they somebody makes a complaint about their activities as a PT because they were doing wellness, then is that something that we would address? I think we would certainly bring it to the board if it looked like it had merit. But liability questions again are a completely different issue. As you know, in Louisiana, if somebody gets hurt, everybody that touched them or is in any way in their space is going to get sued.
So am I to understand that if we didn't have, as a board, regulations that spoke of wellness, then at that point there would be no real recourse from the board to that particular licensee?
No. Wellness is just a subset of being a therapist. If you don't have it, you're still a therapist. It's to your point, Claude, you're always a therapist.
I think it has to do with the context in which the services are performed. If you are putting yourself out there as a physical therapist who also performs wellness, you're putting yourself into the public as a physical therapist who also performs wellness services. Now, if you're a physical therapist and you work during the day as a physical therapist, and at night you go and work at a yoga studio as a yoga instructor, and you're teaching yoga courses, you're teaching yoga classes at night. When you go at night and you work at the yoga studio, you're functioning as a yoga instructor. You're not functioning as a physical therapist. If you go and teach an aerobics class at a fitness center, you're working as an aerobics instructor. You're not working as a physical therapist. But if you are in your practice and you are advertising in your practice that you do wellness services in your practice, then you are functioning as a physical therapist, and you should be subject to all the rules and regulations, that govern the practice of physical therapy in Louisiana.
But here's my point to that, Lee. If I am the business owner and I decide to have a split duty at my clinic where I'm treating patients and I'm doing wellness, yeah, I could see your point because it's under the same roof. But if I'm a physical therapist working for somebody else and there is no opportunity for me to do wellness, then the only way that there would not be any presumption to my expertise as an expert in the field of rehabilitative and or exercise in general, the biomechanics of it, the physiology associated with it, would be for me to travel 100 miles where nobody knows my name and would not make the assumption that I am using my expertise in yoga, Pilates, or any other forms. Unless you are not practicing at all, and then you can tell the patient, I am not practicing or the client at that point, I'm not practicing as a physical therapist in any way, shape, or form, and I'm only doing wellness. I have a friend of mine that has a Pilates studio. She does not work as a physical therapist, even though she has a physical therapy license.
No, she's working as a Pilates instructor.
Yeah, but if you have a split duty where you're working during the day as a PT and you're working at night at a Pilates studio, and the general public can look you up on the internet and sees that you're a physical therapist, they will come with the assumption that you have expertise. And in your capacity in that role, I don't think that you can remove that hat of a clinician because you have at that point to make the determination, and it's not under your roof, it's under any roof. You make that determination of if the that individual becomes a patient or if it becomes a client. So that determination by itself is a higher level responsibility that befalls a physical therapist.
And that's what Katie was talking about, the duty of care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, Jim, if you can talk about that. I mean, I tend to agree with Lee on that. If you're in a different place doing a totally different thing, someone's coming in paying for a Pilates class, they're not assuming you're doing an evaluation. But if you're a therapist in your office providing wellness, part of the wellness is to determine what you need for a wellness program, which requires or should require at least some sort of an evaluation, which if it's in a PT office, you're doing a PT evaluation and then giving them some treatment plan, even though it's not formal therapy. Completely different from I'm doing a Pilates, I'm on a reformer, and I mean, I'm not. There's no presumption of that, but I think it all. I don't know. I think legally you would know, but I would tend to agree with Lee on that one.
Okay, so Matthew, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If I am a Pilates instructor as a physical therapist with the knowledge that I have, will I not have an instant evaluation of that client walking through the door to see and make a determination if they're appropriate for um, Pilates or not, and or if they should be seeking medical help? And if so, on what basis am I making that judgment call? Because I'm an educated person or because I'm an educated and licensed clinician, right? You cannot remove, like you said, you cannot remove your professional hat and make assumptions that without any disclaimers before, after, during, that you're not making any recommendation, that you're making vague recommendations. So if you were to see me and you say, well, usually for rotator cuff issues, oh, I have one of those. Yeah, but usually for rotator cuff issue, we prescribe, conservatively over-the-counter medication like Tylenol and ibuprofen together, and I go home and I do that and I end up with major ulcerative colitis as a result of, or kidney failure, and I come back and come and see you, do you think that a panel of your peers would not say, why did you even tell them that? It's a generalized statement, but by the fact that you are known, and that's why I'm saying that you go 100 miles out and there is no way that they can see you within that community. Okay, I could probably stretch my brain on that, but you can still be searched and researched for whatever skills that you have. I know that if I'm looking for a place to do yoga, I will go online and look at all the reviews and look at all the credential of the person that actually is teaching yoga. So if there is a mention in there, or if there's side by side information, Pilates and or yoga and physical therapy on this side, then I will go to that person knowing that they know a whole lot more than Joe Blow that just went to a weekend class. And that's where that determination of where does your clinical eyeball no longer apply. And
Well,
I
I mean,
think
I
that you
think
can never undo that.
no, I'm with you. And again, I don't want to belabor this whole meeting about this, but or at all. But so on that, you listed a couple things. So number one, you talked about giving medical advice, which has nothing to do with doing Pilates, right? You chose to do that if that's you saying, hey, go take some Motrin. So I don't ever do that. And if I do, I always ask them, and everyone should, right? But if you choose to give medical advice without telling the person, hey, do you actually have ulcers in your stomach? Do you take blood thinners? Which I ask everyone, no matter what. If it's down the street and they go, hey, should I take Motrin? I ask those questions because they're taking my advice regardless. Right. So that would have been a poor choice on that therapist. Right. So, but if they're coming to your Pilates studio and there is not anything about you being a therapist, can you do Pilates? I don't know, Jim. I think you probably can. But the moment you put on a therapist hat, you're no longer just a Pilates instructor. You're a physical therapist. Same thing with me. As long as I give advice, I'm not just the dude down the street talking to the lady about her hip pain. I gave her medical advice. So, there's lots of us who know that and will say, hey, look, do this, but if it still hurts, you got to call your doctor or me. Like, not, hey, take Motrin for 2 weeks or a month and just see what happens. And then they say, well, you gave me this advice and I had a bleeding ulcer and had to have surgery for it, right? You didn't tell me that. So I think it comes down to one, it's just, I don't know if we got to, I mean, it should, anyway, I think it's that, right? So the moment someone becomes a therapist, you are no longer a Pilates instructor. You became a therapist to that person. But if you remain a Pilates instructor, it's fine. But if you're in your office, you're always a therapist because they walked in an office that said Cloud Tremblay Physical Therapy coming in for wellness. You're a therapist the whole time. So anyway, I don't know, Jim, but that's how I read it. But
Okay. I think I've had some great discussions. Y'all want to decide on this or review it before you approve it right now, or we can bring it to a retreat and discuss it at the retreat as well. What y'all's thoughts? Postpone this right
Motion.
now and bring it to
Motion's on the table to vote.
Yes, the motion, the motion here is regarding the drafted statement of the clarification between wellness and maintenance. That was
right.
well done, very concise. We've taken the conversation beyond being germane to the motion as we always do. We're very good at that. So I would call the question on the motion. Call the vote. So, Mr. Chairman, at this time, we should vote on calling the question and ending debate. So all those in favor of ending debate, vote by saying aye.
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 All those opposed to ending debate? So the debate is ended. Now we can vote on the motion.
I think Amanda has a question. She has her hand up.
Yes. Hi, Amanda Brewer, member of the public. Just wanted to mention one thing that you may want to take into consideration is, as I think Charlotte alluded to earlier, are there any Louisiana constituents or residents that don't have a quote diagnosis that may or may not pertain to physical therapy? And so one thing to consider may be that if we were able to document they do have a diagnosis, but we are not treating them for that diagnosis. Maybe that's something that could be clarified on the flow chart that was created. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that how you document the services that you're providing is vitally important. And then the intended goal of the services you're providing is vitally important.
Yeah, and you're correct. I think everybody's going to have some type of possible diagnosis, I would think, in Louisiana. You can,
Yeah, but that's going full circle around to if you're documenting for CYA, then you're documenting as a knowledgeable, trained professional.
Mm-hmm.
As a Pilates instructor, I'm not obligated to take any information, right? If I was just Joe Blow that went to a weekend class, they don't have any responsibilities, duties, or otherwise to document anything, including comorbidities or pre-existing condition. But if we're covering ourselves with documentation, separating the patient in between wellness and PT services, then at that point, you have the PT hat. You have no choice but to have the PT hat. And I don't think that any practicing physical therapist ever will not ask those pertinent questions like Matthew was discussing. If somebody comes in and I see them limping, I will ask them questions. Am I asking them questions as Joe Blow, or am I asking them questions as Claude, the physical therapist?
I think that's a good point. Was there an evaluation, a diagnosis, and a plan of care that was formulated? If so, I would think that would be physical therapy. I do think there are some cases where someone may have a diagnosis provided by a medical professional or a physician where they're not seeking you as a wellness provider for preventative services for other issues. They're not seeking your treatment in any other ailments that they may have. They're seeking you for preventative issues in a wellness capacity unrelated to other diagnosis that they may have.
Thank you, Amanda.
So this time, do we need to move to approve this document?
You just need to vote.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can you put the motion back on the screen?
Lee, it's me controlling everything. I
Oh,
had just put the
sorry,
correct
Jessica.
No, it's okay. I just put the correct document for you guys up because the chart we showed you was not related to this, and I just want to make sure the board had the correct information. So this was the document you guys originally made a motion on to vote for, completely unrelated to that chart we showed you. Just for clarification purposes. I'll get the motion back up for you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Chairman, Lee Riley, I move to approve the drafted statement regarding clarification of wellness and maintenance to be included in the next newsletter and made available on the board website.
Is there a second?
Adam York, second.
Is there any further discussion regarding this? Is there any further public comment? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Say nay. The ayes have it. Okay, moving on to some more new business. We have a budget amendments for both the fiscal year 24-25 and 25-26 budgets.
I'm going to get those on the screen for you guys. Hang tight one moment. Okay, sorry about the delay.
No worries, Jessica.
All right, Charlotte, I'll take it from here and you can pipe in when needed. The summary of the proposed amendments for fiscal year 2024-25 and fiscal year 25-26 budgets. Proposed amendments to fiscal year 24-25 budget, the current fiscal year. Proposed amendments to the current fiscal year budget are intended to reflect updated income projections and actual and anticipated expenditures. Line items that are proposed to change are displayed in green. Here are the summary of the changes. I don't think they're in color. Are they, Charlotte? Anybody see this in color?
I did not.
Okay, good. I'm not the only one not colorblind. All right, thank you. All right, so income amendments. Compact fees were originally estimated a little higher. Since we are nearing the end of the fiscal year, the amended estimate is closer to what is actually be received this fiscal year. Renewal income and late fees is actual as of today since the renewal period ended 4/30/25. Expense amendments, several line items have been revised to more accurately reflect spending patterns, including reductions in legal, general, and increases in legal, prosecutor, and payroll expenses. Other income expenses, the amended budget includes new allocations of other expenses for the Extra Mile Conference and the new office space planning were not originally included in the budget, but should be budgeted and funds were expended. Any questions to that? We're just basically cleaning up for what we projected versus what's actual. And in doing so, it brings us to proposed budget amendments for 25-26. I just lost that on my screen. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Upcoming fiscal year. Amendments to the upcoming fiscal year budget are designed to enhance operational capacity, support regulatory effectiveness, and invest in strategic initiatives. Highlights included. In income, the adjustments reflect a shift in renewal projections and actual estimates for interest income from short-term investments are budgeted in the regular income, since we are expected to spend the funds that we receive in the fiscal year. In expenses, that just got blotted out on mine. Okay, great. Expenses. The revisions to legal and IT and professional service budgets reflect actual expected costs and also cost-saving opportunities. Adjustments to payroll categories reflect actual changes and updated benefits costs. We took the actuals that changed this year to give us a more exact of what we are in 2024, and we took those changes and we brought them forward to 2025 and 26 in order to maintain a balanced budget.
Yeah, and we'll display that on the screen in the Excel document, so y'all can see exactly what the changes are.
Mr. Chairman, we have a member of the public who had her hand up as well. It was Katie.
Yes, thank you. That was really my question, is so for the public to allow us an opportunity for comment. The first section said several items were being addressed, but only 2 were mentioned, and the bottom just says highlights. And so as the public, we'd like the opportunity to review the actual changes, please.
Thank you, Katie.
Okay. Jessica, why don't you let me share it so that I have the ability to scroll through it? Sorry. Okay, so I have it up on the screen and I will share it. Okay. So I'm going to go up to the top. And so what is in green? Ode, do you mind if I talk through it real quickly?
Please do. Yes, ma'am.
So, yeah, so Ode gave you a quick overview, but in terms of income, you can see that the compact income in columns B and C, it's for this current fiscal year, which ends June 30th. And then in column F and G, we're talking about the fiscal year that begins July 1st, 2025, and it's next year's, which y'all approved both of these budgets in January of 2025. So compact income is actually going to be lower. So we amended that a little bit lower. Same thing with the credit card fees in both years, as well as the wall certificates in this year. For next year's disciplinary reimbursement, I lowered that to be equal to this year's. We just never know. It depends on how many cases are closed and how much individuals pay each year. So as you can see, I'll just cover this year first. These renewal year 1 and 2 are actuals after the renewal period. So as of May 1st, this is what it looked like. That may change a little bit in terms of as people get 2-year licenses, we do get a little bit more income in the renewal category in the late, but this is pretty close to what we're going to end the year in. So next year's budgets were changed based on what I actually thought. So renewal year 2 for this year, which is line 15, turns into renewal year 1 next year, because that's actual what we are going to budget and what we actually brought in. Renewal 2 next year is based on what we think we will bring in. Next year, we also budgeted interest that we are going to be earning on our CDs as part of our income, because we plan on spending the interest earned and not putting it more in towards our investments. Do y'all have any questions about the income categories?
And Charlotte, it doesn't matter whether we intend to spend it or we don't spend it. It's income that needs to be reported.
Yeah, typically we put it in the other income category, but next year we're putting it in our regular income category as a bit of a change. So our total income, we're actually going to be bringing in more than we originally thought whenever y'all approved the budget this year and next year. And these are based on what we really do think is going to come in based on information that we have currently. In terms of expenses, computer consulting for next year, we reduced that down because we got a quote from our IT vendor for next year, and it's really closer to $6,000 to $7,000 that they anticipate us spending. But we thought if we have to do after hours work or anything like that, we gave us a little cushion. But so we doubled it. But we don't think that we're going to spend $25,000. For the court reporter, you never know. This year, we're not going to have any more court reporter fees, so we're ending the year around $650. Next year, we're a big hearing like we had in January of last year. The court reporter charge is $7,000. So we're just budgeting for 2 big hearings. And that's the best we can do right now. We don't know how many hearings we will actually end up having.
And even in this matter, we are having a hearing next month, and that will be in this fiscal year, but the billing won't occur until next fiscal year. So that's why Charlotte has decided that it'll be moved into the year in which it's billed and the year in which we pay it.
Okay. Just one second. One of our board members lost internet, so and got kicked out of the meeting. So
I'm back.
oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so then credit card income and credit card fees. This is, the cost of the credit card transactions on our website. So we equal that to what's on the income. So we don't have income at 25,000, so we're not going to budget expenses at 25,000. That's what we actually think will happen. In terms of discipline and investigative, that's whenever we have to pay for subpoena returns, things like that. So we just, budgeted based on what we thought on the last several years average. Our dues are actually higher. If you look at the category this year, it's going to be closer to 12,000. So we budgeted for what we actually think it'll be closer to, and next year as well. Hardware, software, we're going to end the year lower than we budgeted. And next year, we don't think we're going to need any more computers and stuff like that. So we budgeted lower next year. Hearing officers, the same discussion that O'Day mentioned just now about hearings. So we use a hearing officer for hearings, and sometimes in between. We don't anticipate any new charges this year, but next year we budgeted for 2. Internet, we changed it next year to be actual because we had kind of just done a 2,000 instead of the actual. General counsel and prosecutor are based on what we actually anticipate ending the year in this year. And then next year, our fees go up because the attorney general allowable rate went up. And so our contracts are going up. And so we added what we anticipate we think will happen with that. As we continue to go through, it's just like, what we're actually anticipating this year and what we're thinking about for next year. So I can go through all of these individually with y'all. I hate to take all your time doing this, but I'll let y'all look through it for right now. The categories that are impacted are mileage for staff, office supplies, and then from health down to the highlighted, like bold payroll expenses. Those are what we actually anticipate this year. Payroll software charges, per diem for advisory committee members, all those, slightly off, we're anticipating for next year. And we are conservative with our budgets. Print copy mailing. The reason why it goes up to 20,000 is because we started doing print newsletters again. So each time we do a newsletter, it costs us with postage and printing and the design and all that. It costs about $8,000 to $10,000. So figure 2 newsletters per fiscal year is expensive, and so that's what we're going to budget for this year. For professional services, next year, our Department of Justice contract got reduced because all the boards are now using them. So we were able to save some money in professional services. That's where they review our rules and also our decisions of the board from the Department of Justice. Okay, repairs and maintenance, RPTP. We had budgeted a little bit extra this year because we anticipate overlap with a replacement of Kathy. Next year, we go back to the regular rate. Security, we've been spending more money on security because we're having more police officers in the building whenever we have meetings and making sure that we are, appropriately secure. So not only the alarm system, but also the police officers are included in that. Travel is all based on what we anticipate we will need. And then website for next year, 6,000 of that will not be for change orders. It will actually be for hosting and support. And then what we did in other expenses is we put our ADA changes, because that's a one-time expense that we weren't anticipating. It's $75,000 to do our website ADA stuff. Well, mine is 6,000, which is our hosting and support. Am I going too fast, or am I going at the best speed for y'all?
You're good. You're doing great.
Okay, great. So then our net income, we're still in the positive. This year, we're going to end in positive around 22,000. Next year, with the amendments, we end in the positive at around 12,000, even with all those changes. So in terms of other income, this year, we anticipate 55,000 in interest, and we put it in other income. Like I said, next year, we're just putting it in our regular income. Other expenses, this year, we had the extra mile, the new office. And so next year, our other expenses that we anticipate is the extra mile conference again at the same rate. Office space, we still have some soft moving expenses that we just want to budget for just in case. Board retreat, we talked about doing that this summer. That will likely be in July or August, which is next fiscal year. ADA website that I mentioned is 75,000. We take 6,000 out for our hosting and support, and then continued competence, which will be discussed at the retreat. Y'all had put 200,000 aside to address continued competence needs and reinvesting the income from CEs into that particular area. So I will now turn it over to y'all for questions and discussion.
I make a motion to approve it.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Claude.
Any further discussion?
I think
Katie
Kate
has her hand up.
Hey, thanks. Was the salary increase 11%?
Our executive director received.
So whenever I went and looked at what I had actually estimated in retirement, in all of those categories, I was off on the percentage for sure, because every year with our retirement system, the legislature, looks at what they're going to approve for the employer portion. And I had carried over the percentage and never reduced it.
I'm talking about salaries.
Oh, you're talking about
45. Yeah,
okay.
line 45.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so what we had originally budgeted is no longer going to be our actual.
Can you speak to why?
Say again, Katie, what's your question?
I'm just curious why the percentage increase in salaries is what it is. I was just asking a clarifying question.
Yeah, we've
Like,
had staff members that have gotten increases in their salary and raises.
And what we had originally budgeted in general wasn't matching our actuals. And so what we are doing now is showing a reflection of how we're going to end the year.
Any further discussion? Any more public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, we got some unfinished business to discuss here. The only task force update we have today is from the task force that was looked at, in which we should require satisfy Rule 187.c. Rule 187.c states that reinstatement of a lapsed license shall also require that applicant or his employer reimburse or reverse charges which have been made for patient treatment during the period in which the applicant did not have a current and valid license. And the board did form a task force. And Charlotte, can you provide the task force recommendations for this? Thank you.
Yeah, so first I'd like to thank everybody who participated on the task force. It was a lot of work and a lot of thoughtful discussion, and board members and advisory committee members and Jim all participated. In the end, there were 2 task force meetings, and the purpose was to discuss Rule 187C, it's required that licensees reimburse or reverse charges whenever their license has lapsed, and they shall do this as a condition of reinstatement. So the task force was formed to determine, what will be required to show proof that this is done, and to consider, all aspects related to this rule. So in the end, the committee or the task force recommends that Rule 187C is referred to the Practice Act Committee for consideration. Many things went into this discussion, but in the end, it was found that, our state, of all the healthcare boards, the other boards aren't requiring that reimbursement or reversal of the charges occur. And in the nation, the PT boards, no one has reported also doing this. And so also the Office of Inspector General stated that whenever we were like, hey, should we be reporting these to you? And then you can, determine what to do. And they said, well, if it's somebody who's revoked or suspended in practicing, or if it's somebody who never had a license before and otherwise wouldn't qualify for a license, do you, you know, then yes, refer those. But otherwise, it's considered just more of a clerical issue and it would not be considered fraud in our department. So don't refer those to us. So with that all said, we recommend that the rules committee look at that rule and consider it for a change so that we're not, you know, the board doing this.
Yes. Any further discussion regarding this? Okay, public comment. Is there any public wishing to make public comment on anything we discussed at the board meeting today?
Mr. Chairman, Lee Riley, do we have to create a motion to refer Rule 187C to the Practice Act Committee for further consideration?
Yeah, if that's a recommendation of the committee, Lee, let's go ahead and do a motion on it.
Okay, Lee Riley, I move to refer the Rule 187C to the Practice Act Committee for further consideration and for the opportunity to amend the rule.
Adam York, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Is there any public, again, public comment? Anybody wishing in the public to comment on anything we spoke about on the board today?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Excuse me, was that,
I'll second that.
excuse me,
All
feel
in
okay
favor?
to make a motion to adjourn?
All in
Sorry.
favor? All opposed? Is there any public comment? The ayes have it. Okay. We're officially